In this video, I'm going to show you how to blend in 5 exposures. So we're going to layer into a base exposure 4 darker exposures to recover the sun. Now I'd like to point something out here. Because we have techniques like matching and pre-masking, we don't need 5 exposures for this scene. We can just use 2 and it will look great. The reason why I'm including this in here is because I still get emails from people asking me how to blend in more than 3 exposures. And even though I say it's really not necessary, it seems like the world of HDR software has almost hard-coded it into some photographers that you need to blend in a lot of exposures. But exposure blending is different to HDR. We don't need more than 3 exposures. Nevertheless, just to satisfy some of those curious minds, I'm going to blend in these exposures for you. I haven't included the images here because it's a fairly simple process. If you followed along the course so far, then you would find this particularly easy to exposure blend anyway. But the raw files aren't particularly attractive either. We've got lots of sensor dirt here and we've got some flare, so I prefer not to share that with you guys. Now let me show you how we exposure blend with 5 exposures. So we got the base on the bottom and each exposure after that gets a little bit darker. So we put the next darker exposure on top of that and the next one and the next one until we have the darkest exposure on top. Now to blend these exposures, we of course keep the base exposure visible to start off with. We can create something like a Brights 1 mask, which is too general because we just want to affect the area in the sun here. So Brights 2 is a little bit general as well. Brights 3 looks okay, and we might be able to bring it along a little bit more to make a more accurate selection. And if so, we can press select, black mask, show the layer, hide the marching ants, choose a white brush, and I'm going to make it a nice big brush, and I'm going to paint in that layer. So that's all we needed to paint in this particular layer. To blend in the next layer, we keep this layer visible because we now need to make a smaller selection of the sun. So I'm going to go back to Brights 3, which has given us a decent selection. So again, I'm going to bring this slider along just to make it a bit more general. Press select, create a black mask, hide the marching ants, show the layer, make sure I've got a white brush selected, and now we just paint in that area as well. And I've also painted in some of the rest of the sky just for consistency there. And I'll give it one more click just to reinforce that blending. And I press deselect. So here is what we have so far, already reduced quite a lot of that sun. Now I'm going to keep this exposure visible again. I'm going to choose a Brights 3 again. You see, each time that sun, the selection becomes smaller and smaller. So once more, go through the same process that I've been a few times, and then I can paint in that exposure. And you see, we're really bringing back the sun. And for the final one, if we really need it, we have the darkest exposure, keep that invisible, Brights 3 again, maybe make it a slightly more contrasting mask, press select, choose a black brush, show the layer, hide the marching ants, white brush, and there we go. That is how you blend in 5 exposures. So here's before and there's after. Before and after. And of course, if you feel like the area to the right here is a little bit too dark, we can select all these darker exposures, group them, put a mask on these darker exposures, choose a black foreground, and we can actually paint them out. So I'm going to use an opacity of 50% for my brush and just paint out some of these areas. Maybe at 30% here, maybe at 30% along there as well. So it's still bright, but we've still got the sun recovered, which looks a lot more natural than just having a dark dot in the top left-hand corner. So that is how we'd exposure blend 5 exposures. Again, guys, you don't need to, you can just use matching. It's a much easier process and it requires far fewer layers. So this now concludes your course. We've covered all of the material that you need to exposure blend with ease. But I encourage you to experiment as much as possible with your own images. And whenever you come up with a problem, just return to the course, watch it again and see if you can find the answer to that problem. And with almost every problem that appears, you'll find a resolution within the course. And I definitely encourage you to rewatch the matching and pre-masking videos.